Good afternoon. David Pendleton from the Harvard Film Archive here. It's a pleasure to see all of you. And welcome to, the first program on the last day. I'll be very brief. We're going to start with, an animated short by Nuno Leonel from 1989 called Santa Maria, full of rage and joy in a combination that I can only describe as punk. As you'll see in the film, rage at many forms of power, but a joyful presentation of this rage. And there's something about the musicality of the film that I think speaks to Matt's work as well, because I think Matthew is somebody who's inspired a lot by music, at least that's how I see it. And there's a lot of music in the films, perhaps more music in Putty Hill, last night's film, than in Hamilton. But nevertheless, I think Santa Maria will be a jolt of energy to wake us up and focus us on Hamilton, which is a much more lyrical and quiet piece. Hamilton, another neighborhood of Baltimore, like Putty Hill. This is Matt's first feature film from 2006, and like the first feature film of Agnès, La Pointe, Courte, we could see it as a portrait of a relationship in crisis between a man and a woman. Although, as you'll see, it's really more a portrait of these people and of the place, more than any true narrative drive. And like Putty Hill, it takes place over a very brief period of time, really. But I won't say any more. Please stick around for the 6 p.m. screening when we'll have more work by Madame Varda, and then we'll have a discussion with all of the filmmakers at that point. Matthew will be here after the film if you want to talk to him informally, if you can't stick around. But I'll pass the microphone to our makers.
So it's strange how one can make connections between things, strange connections. I was thinking this morning that Nuno was born in '69. 1 year before he was born, I suppose Agnès was doing a film around or about a meeting of the Black Panthers for the liberation of Huey Newton. I suppose the year is right. And 20 years, maybe 20 years later, a bit less than 20 years later, Nuno came to me. I met him when he was around 15 or 16, and he had this idea of doing a film which is a collage of different ideas, as you say, with a lot of rage. And he wanted to dedicate the film to Huey Newton. So it's strange, and the film actually was from the same year when he was murdered. So in a way there are this, I won't tell you much about the film. He came with these ideas. It's made in conventional animation. And it has also a number of ideas in the soundtrack that I worked in sound by that time, and some things he said, I want to do this, and I said, well, I don't know if that's going to work, and he said, I want it, so I just gave him a tape recorder and microphone and said, well, you try it, you record it, let's see how it happens. And in the end, it's quite funny because it was the first Portuguese film made in Dolby, and the guys from Dolby, I was in the mixes, and the guys from Dolby then asked the film to test the cinemas because it takes some of the frequencies and whatever to the limit. So I don't know if it's playing loud, but it's supposed to be played very loud.
Looking forward. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I made this film, shot this film in 2001 in the neighborhood where I grew up, in the house I grew up in, because I wanted to make something to see if I could make a movie. And it continues to amaze me that the film still screens, that it found an audience at all, and that I'm here today, and that you're going to see it on 16. The film only really exists on 16. We shot on standard 16, and since we were released in 2006, it was still possible to play festivals and even find very small, brief theatrical runs with a 16mm print. I don't know if you could do that really today. But thanks to the Harvard Film Archive, this is a relatively new one, so it should be in good shape. We have a couple that are pretty beat up from years of use. 60 minutes, hope you like it. I'm happy to talk about it later.
Good evening, David Pendleton here from the Harvard Film Archive. Welcome to the final screening this weekend of Harvard Gulbenkian program entitled Portrait Landscape. The program was really built around the work of and in tribute to the work of Joaquim Pinto and Nuno Leonel. And in a way, there is a text that is sort of just off screen that we're not showing this weekend, and that is the latest film by Pinto that's really made him discovered, certainly in the United States. And I'm speaking, of course, of E Agora Lembra-me, What Now, Remind Me, in which Pinto mixes diary film and autobiography, and even a bit of essay, we could say. And this mixture made me think, of course, of the work of Agnès Varda, who is one of the great pioneers of the personal, mixing the personal film and the essay film. And so it's a great honor to have her here. We close tonight's final program. Will include a discussion of Hamilton by Matthew Porterfield, which we showed this afternoon. But the final program is two recent films by Varda, Agnès de Ci et de là Varda, which will be it's an excerpt. It was a television series made up of Varda's musings, films that she did in her travels, etc. We'll be seeing an excerpt from that and her most recent feature film, Les Plages d'Agnès. But now I pass the mic to La Maestra herself.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, thank you. It is true that I was asked by channel Arte, French channel, the better we have, to do a second part of Les Plages d'Agnès, as if I had not told enough about me, about myself. And I was fed up speaking about myself after working on Les Plages d'Agnès, that you will see. So I used that money. It was supposed to be an additional to film in many countries where I went, sometimes invited to show Les Plages d'Agnès, and sometimes for my own pleasure. And I decided to make 45 minutes of travelings, including meetings or some artists, like in Mexico, I meant regadas, but in most of the country, I tried to go to the museums and to meet artists. So in one of the series, there is a long thing about Boltanski, another time it's Soulage, then I had and then this part, I came to Portugal, and you'll see in the middle of my, would you call that travelogue? And I made a little, comment on dit un détour? You know, I went on a side alley.
Detour.
A detour. I made a detour to point the question about photography and cinema and photography. So you end up to have Portugal plus a little detour. And I thought I should show it here, since this is a country where I had the pleasure to film this. And then the Plages d'Agnès, no comment.
Yes, there'll be discussion afterwards, so please stick around. Thank you. Perhaps this is the final conversation, so in some ways it's sort of a accumulation of everything that we've seen over the last 3 days. But certainly we've all been moved by the film that we've just seen. And I thought I would start by citing a couple of different parts of the film and asking you, Agnès, a question. Because towards the very end, you say, what is cinema? Qu'est-ce que le cinéma? And for some of us, that brings the name André Bazin to mind, who talks about the screen as both a mirror and a window. And you open the film, there are plenty of mirrors at the beginning of the film. And I'm wondering if you can talk about this movement from your first film, La Pointe, Courte, which is all about people fisherman in a village to a film that's all about you. And so this autobiographical impulse, can you talk about where it comes from? What made you decide to make a film about yourself? Were other films autobiographical to begin with? Are you using the camera as a mirror or as a window?
Not as a mirror. I thought I've been through a very fulfilled life. And I remember, I don't want to be literaire, but I reread Les Essais de Montaigne. I don't know if it's known, a prologue. And before writing, he said that now that I'm old, and I thought that I should maybe let know my family, my friends, what happened, how was my life. And now that I should do it because maybe in a short time, they will have to remember me, and I give them some keys. I was so impressed because Montaigne was a philosopher and a very serious man. His writing are very, very intellectual, serious. And then he has that little trembling thing to say, maybe I should tell about me. And I thought then I could allow myself to do the same. And I should tell some stories that my children and grandchildren maybe not imagine at all, like the way the house now where I live is so beautiful in a way with the little patio. But it used to be a mess. I mean, so bad that we had to rebuild the patio as it was in the 50s. So it's a documentary with some fiction, made up things, and especially for the house. I wanted them to see that there was no heating, no bathroom, nothing, that I lived like like in a, I don't know.
Like a stable, as your father said.
Yeah, my father said that. And so, not that I had to be proud of it, but I think they did not imagine how I started, how I worked, what I did, including terrible photos that I made. And so I thought it was funny, not funny, but it made sense to tell them. Then it became a subject in itself. And I thought, how can you tell? It's not so much tell what happened to me. What is the way what is the style that I can find to tell that? So it became a cinematic question more than telling my life. How, what means, what. And then I started to say, okay, I go back, but I'm not going back and show my back. I think I should go back, but then look at the people. That was my point. So I go like this, and I'm not away. So that's that. Then, as you said yourself, self-portrait, all the painters, they do it in front of a mirror and then they paint. And I brought the theme of mirror because it's obvious when you speak. But you see, in the first seed, instead of looking like this at the mirror, I put the mirror in front of the people with me. That was the theme of the whole film, is that to use the mirror as reflecting other people. That's all. That's the basic. And then I had to find way of doing, sometimes recreating, like the scene on the boat during the war. Had no images of that. So I created the boat, the scenes including the school. All this is remade. So it's a documentary with some fiction when needed. And I could feel each time if I need something or not. So it had to find, just to fulfill the theme that I was, by chance, always living near beaches. So it became the beaches of Belgium for my childhood, the beach of the south of France for adolescence and youth. Then I met Jacques Demy, who was from Nantes and the island of Noirmoutier. So with him, I went to the Atlantic beaches. Then we went to live in California, in Los Angeles, and we had these beaches. And then to I would say, to justify the title, I had to make a fake beach in front of my house. Because it became a game, because I lived so long that place. So we made a beach, and I was helper. They brought sand, and I was so lucky that my office, all the people working with me accepted to do the office in the street. We brought the computer, the telephone. We loved to do that. We enjoyed the day so much. So we had the permission for Saturday, Sunday, and Monday they would clean it up. And it started to rain on Sunday. So we had just 2 days. It became a reason to show the rain and etc. So it has become like, a game to play the game of the beaches and play the game of how can I tell something which becomes a theme, the same way you say landscape and portrait. You have the portrait and the landscape of all the landscape I went to meet. But I want to steal a show. I mean, we have 4 films to speak about.
We could bring Joaquim into this a little bit if you want to talk about, because both of you have recently these films in which you appear. I'm also curious about the experience of seeing yourself while you're editing. This idea of filming others or filming oneself.
I speak about myself as somebody else. I say, "Well, she's too slow in this one. Let's do it in the better shape." I mean, it's like when I did Jacques de Nantes. And I was editing Jacques Demy, feeling, you have to separate yourself from being the person. I became the editor. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have feelings about myself. It had to be the best take and throw the others.
Mm-hmm. I think I would agree with you. It's actually when you shoot yourself and then you have to deal with what you have. First of all, for me, it was a surprise because I hadn't done it before.
Right.
Second thing, it was also a surprise because while we were shooting, we didn't see any material. We just saw everything in the end. And it's really quite surprising. And you have to, in a way, detach yourself and don't think about, do I look good or bad in this side or that side? You have to look at yourself as a character, I think. Mm-hmm. But I would like just to add 2 or 3 things. I was, first of all, concerning your the short film that you screened. It was a real pleasure for me to see it, not only because it has bits shot in Portugal, but also because I saw for the first time something that I experienced personally. I did many films on sound with Manuel de Oliveira. For me, he is a fantastic person in a way that sometimes he says things that are absolutely obvious, but you never thought about them. And he has an incredible sense of humor. And it's the kind of thing that when I told to my friends that pleasure of working with somebody, they take him as a very kind of serious, even boring old man, and nobody would believe me. And it's fantastic to see it on screen for the first time. And the second question is that also touched me in your film is this, which is a quite intriguing thing, and you had the courage to show it. It's I would say the relationship between image or film and death, and what you feel about people you eventually worked with or shot, and when you're confronted with these images of people who are gone. And because I think I experienced the same, especially for people who were close to me. And in the case of Oliveira, you did Jacques de Nantes, and Oliveira did something which is, for me, quite extraordinary, which is he did a film about himself set in the future, only to be shown after his death, where, in a way, he expressed some of his thoughts about things he's maybe too shy to talk about while he's alive. So this idea of secrecy and some things about you that you maybe don't care to talk about, but when you're not there anymore, he did it. And I think most of you haven't seen the film because the film is kept to be shown after his death. But it's quite there was a lot of courage. So we shared this moment of intimacy with him while doing this film, because it shows a few people were close to him to do it. And I'm not going to...
Well, no, but this question of death, I think, is something that runs through all of the films that we've seen, from the death of the child in La Pointe Courte. There's a death of a child that's happened shortly before Onde, Bate begins. and then of course Putty Hill is all about a funeral, and you touch on it here, and yes, this question of the image and the passage of time. There's both the passage of time within the image, but also as images grow older and we look back at them, it's like going back to an earlier time. I'm not really building up to a question. I'm just sort of drawing out what you're saying, Joaquim, and relating it to all the films that we've seen.
Sorry, and I was also surprised because I had seen a few months ago in Paris an exhibition with an installation from you. Yeah, near the Centre Pompidou, just in front. For me, it was a surprise. I knew you were a photographer, but I didn't know about this sort of
New life.
your new life. And
My third life.
But in a way,
I had one life as a photographer, one life as a filmmaker. Now I'm a visual artist. Be careful.
But in a way, it makes. I think it makes sense because actually, I wonder how long this experience of watching two films, like in a dark room, or how long this is going to last, because things are changing so fast. So I think it's really important to give the next step or something, and maybe that's the way to go. Because, for instance, when we did our last film, we had this idea, let's do it in a different way, something. And this idea about the mirror, we thought, would it be possible, like when the film is screened, when the credits, by the end credits, to have like a camera pointing at the audience, so that while the credits go, people would see, the people who are watching the film would see themselves on screen. And then we had this idea and thought, let's do it like this. But then we were told it's not possible. Nobody would want to screen a film which needs a whatever special device or something. So maybe your way is the way to go. I don't know. So
No, it's true that I'm glad you saw that exhibition, because most of the people who know my films are not interested in my new life. And it's more than 10 years that I do these exhibitions, this installation, etc. And some come, but most of the time, it's like another world, other audience, other people, other connection. And okay, I switch, doesn't mean that I don't deal with my own film since you invited me. But it's very rare. It happened in 2 or 3 cities that they asked me to show film and to show 1 or 2 installations. So I accept what comes, but I'm glad you made the link that I'm questioning the new way of sharing images, emotion with audiences, not the same one. This is a flat screen, and we share with people together who watch the same film on a flat screen. When you do an exhibition, an installation, you are more in risk because people enter, go out, they don't look, they look. Some people pass like this, some people sit and watch the video. So it's more difficult to capture an audience, but if they do, they get other kind of emotion, and you saw it. And sometimes it's like, comment on dit chatouiller? Tickling people in another part of their mind and their heart, proposing something else. And I think our way of, for me, I feel that the duty of an artist is to try something to reach people somewhere in other places, another, comment on dit, les strates, other level of understanding, of sharing, of laughing. So I thought I allowed myself to start that 10 years ago. I think, okay, for that last part of my life, I try something else. Sometimes it works. Some galleries, some museums have been liking, and some other, it does. So it's the same risk than films, but I'm enjoying very much other experiences. So this was not the debate of tonight.
May I just say something before we go back to the films? Because I have also the feeling that what's really one of the things of watching a film in a theater like this is that you, as a director, we control time. You do the film, you set the pace, you set the time. So it's not like in a book, people read a few pages and then stop and then can go on the next day. In cinema, you're a slave to you were enslaved to the time of the filmmaker and of the film. But actually, I told this to somebody. I took a taxi to come here, and the guy who was driving the taxi told me, I haven't been, is it something with film? And I said yes, because he saw a poster outside. And then he told me, I don't go to cinemas anymore for 10 years, because since there is internet, I see all the films, even the American films at home, I can see them at home. And in that way of environment, people actually take control at that time. So that idea, what you say about an exhibition, that people can wander around, some go fast, some go slow. Actually, it's happening with the way people are seeing films nowadays, because they can just pause or they jump to something else. So actually that sort of different way of approaching films is happening everywhere to the things we do today. Sorry.
Some people get pleasure out of it, you know. Some, even it's a minority, but some people get new emotion, new connection, and discovery of images that, you know, that can be read differently. So it's like experimental for me, but in the last 10 years, I enjoyed that experiment a lot.
Well, there are some of us who still enjoy the cinematic experience, I have to say, because I think that, I mean, cinema is a time, as I say, a time-based medium, and so in fact, if you change the tempo of the film, you're really making a new film, right? But I want to bring Matthew into this conversation. We've been talking. There's two strands of this conversation that I want to ask you about. First of all, the question of autobiography, which you mentioned a little bit last night, talking about Putty Hill. And when you were introducing Hamilton, you pointed out that part of it was shot in the house where you grew up. So I wonder if you feel an autobiographical impulse behind the films that you've made, and also how that worked out with your most recent film, where there's a screenplay that was partially co-written with another person, if I'm not mistaken. But also this question, I guess, of making images that are meant to be seen in the cinema. Because Joaquim Pinto and Agnès Varda have been doing this for a little while. You've been doing it for a few years, but you're much newer to it. And you know, maybe it's easier for them to say, well, we're ready to do something else. But I'm wondering how you feel about making work that would be seen differently, like installation work. Or what's the attachment for you to cinema? Is the cinematic experience important for you moving ahead?
Those are a lot of questions.
Well, one or both or either or whatever.
Okay, and I'm just sort of still in awe from the film, which I saw for the second time. It's very moving to see the scope of your career. For me, someone who's trying to figure out how to sort of get from one film to the next and develop a practice that's sustainable. So one of the things I think about more with each film is how to get more personal. I mean, I have the need, I think, and of course, there are some things that are very connected to my life, to my history in Hamilton and Putty Hill, namely the neighborhood, but also sort of family relations. Some of the actors I grew up with, my grandmother, who is the reason I make films, appears in the garden in Hamilton. And the film is dedicated to my grandfather and a mentor of mine at NYU. So little ways I try to get closer to the material while still keeping a bit of an objective distance from the subjects of the film. I Used to Be Darker was maybe the most personal, my third film, which I did co-write with my partner at the time. So working with someone I was living with, in love with, writing about marriage and divorce. And trying to push it further still on my next feature. In some ways, the short I just made in Berlin is maybe my most personal, as it's about sort of trying to develop an artistic practice. I still like to watch movies in the darkened theater. I think that's what I make images for. I watch movies online, but I prefer to be in the cinema. I do like the sort of the way we get to, as an audience, choose how we interact with time-based media in a sort of gallery or installation format. I've had the opportunity to do a couple installations with moving pictures and still photography, and it's exciting, something I'd like to do more of.
No, well, I wanted to pop in what you're saying about, which is where we're just speaking about the arriving of the digital era, which changed a lot. In that way, I think that the programming these films together, one film of 2001, isn't it, and the other 2008. In these 7 years, it's just like the death of something and the beginning of something new. Because I mean the scope of these two films just compresses this time, and it's interesting that whenever you begin to see your film Hamilton, which is shot in 16 millimeters, and it's beautifully projected here, which is like a pleasure, it immediately just the image arises an interest. I mean, just to see the beginning of the film, the first seconds, the grain, we're speaking about something in extension, Suddenly, the mystery of this is why, whenever you take a camera of 16 and you begin to film and we begin to see it, there is an immediate interest that arises, like kind of, I don't hate this word, but it's like kind of magic. Okay, so and I want to speak about the arrival of the digital cameras, and now you, of course, Agnès, you shot these pages with the digital cameras in this film, and to focus maybe on the subject of these days, which is landscape. I wonder, what do you think, filmmakers? I mean, the four of you. What do you think about digital cameras? I mean, do you think they are yet okay? They're okay to film landscapes yet? Because when you see the landscapes shot in 60 minutes, there's a kind of, you can glimpse the depth of the landscape, but not especially with the digital cameras yet. I mean, I think that they are great to shoot faces, to shoot the skins, but I think in some ways, and we're speaking about this landscape thing, they are not yet well achieved. What do you think about this?
I was lucky enough that when these little cameras came, like 2000, and I just had in mind to do a film a documentary about gleaners that I made. And I had to meet people in bad condition, very poor, in the country. And I was glad I had that tool that I could approach them alone. And sometimes ask them if I could bring a crew. But I don't think you can approach people like putting their hands in a garbage can and come with a crew of 5 people and a big camera, So I was glad I could approach them with a small camera as if it were a photo camera, and then ask them permission. So I knew I could use it because I know how. In some cases, the thing about Portugal, I shot it alone, nothing. I came, I shot. And the shot in which the river Tage enter the ocean, it's not so bad, because I agree with you that the best landscapes are 35 millimeter, including 70 millimeter, to have the totally escape, l'espace. But let's go back, 35 is fine, 16 millimeter is fine, little camera is fine. For me, it doesn't matter. It matters what you want to do, if it's the tool appropriate. And for Les Plages d'Agnès, has a DP, Hélène Louvard, who had a huge digital camera. I mean, as perfect as a 35. But we know for the editing, which is so long, I had so much stuff, it was better to be directly digital. And then, because at the time, the cinema booths were not just equipped, so the Beaches of Agnès exist here it's a 35 millimeter print, right? And exists on DCP, because they were in the switch in which the booth still had the two systems. Nowadays, that's why I had to restore and check my films, because nowadays you can no longer screen the films. So Cleon from 5 to 7 that people want to see, I had to do a DCP now, because 90% of the theaters no longer have the projector. So it's not I'm excited, I like the 35. But you have to adapt to the situation. You know, they were getting 9 reels, you know, of 35, very heavy, the bag, and splice them together on a big flat thing and then screen it, and then displice it, put them back in. When now they get a little DCP not bigger than a DVD. They put it in the computer, say, frame, pluck, and it goes. Obviously, that's the way the industry goes. So we have to go with it, or forget about the other film, the older film. Because what we call the repertory films, all the films made until the 2000, they cannot be seen if they are remaining 35. Well, in cinematheques, in museums, they still have 35 projectors. But it's done, it's gone. So how is it screen your film? You did in 16. Did you blow up? You did a DCP? You did what?
For Hamilton,
Yeah.
we screened a 16 print.
Well, in 2 or 3 places in the world.
16.
Well, what do you intend to do? You want the film to be shown?
No, yeah, we made a decision just to show it on 16.
Be my guest.
And the reason is because we didn't have money. The film was made for almost nothing. We didn't have money to blow it up, and at the time, the only digital version of the film was made from the One Light dailies. We never had money for a digital intermediate as well.
You have to use the original 16mm, and they do a wet scan.
Yeah,
16.
I could go back and do it now, but I don't have the money either.
Immagine ritrovata. Imagine ritrovata. Images refound.
Yeah.
It's a lab. You speak with them, you say, I have a 16-minute print who goes in festival, do me a wet scan. And then they get...
The print, not the negative.
No, wait. The original negative 16. Yes. They do a wet scan. And they get something, like a master. Then they will correct if there are some scratches or some. Then you will have to redo the color timing, because they cannot even use the work you did to have it. But then they do a DCP. Then you can go in the whole world and show your film. Because some festivals maybe no longer have 16mm.
Well, we had to, Gulbenkian was kind enough to rent a 16 for the screening.
Okay. So you see how you think they're ready to do that rent everywhere. Here they're rich, you know. But, yes, it's true. But in many places, they won't rent a 16mm. They won't show it. Just so do the step to DCP, which is the nowadays. If you want people to see it in theaters,
I'll accept donations.
You put in your drawer and you dream. Fine.
Go ahead.
I agree with you. Even if we, here in Portugal, even if we wanted to shoot in film, we couldn't. There's no lab anymore, with the exception of the Cinematheque lab that restores and makes old copies. But I think this question has been addressed. It's quite funny because the same question comes over and over. We went through this in sound, because sound is always ahead of pictures. When we moved from analog to digital, the question, does it sound the same whatsoever? And people were still listening to analog vinyl records and whatever. Now it's more or less forgotten. So it's streamed through the internet. Who cares about if it's maybe a bit better, the quality or not?
Beautiful mixing, digital mixing.
Yes. And the question which had to do with the quality of the converts, I would put it another way, which is in film, you have like a footprint of the image. Each frame is one frame. What we have now is numbers, it's bits. It's these things who begin digitally and who end digitally, how long will they last? That's a bit my question.
But you know, I'm a specialist now. You can ask me, no, because I've been restoring Jacques Demy's film and mine. Now, since they know nothing about digital, so when you get subsidies to do it from the Centre du Cinéma, I was also helped by the Film Foundation. When you are finished with the DCP and the GP 2000, then you have to reshoot in 35mm. because that's the only thing we know that can last. So we finish the work, then we reshoot black and white or color. And that goes to the French National Archives as a negative to save the. Same thing with the Film Foundation. Now they keep it at the Academy, the new Academy Oscar have vault now of preservation. So the film they helped me to restore, they get a negative, a new negative, with the stock of now, which is better than the stock of the 16, which was fading. So, I've been through all that. I went to Bologna, I went to many labs, I did all the digital thing, and then back to 35. And that they sometimes print or not. They don't need 35 millimeter print, but they need something that trust it could last, because we know nothing about digital. And it costs like 80,000 euros each film, more or less. So we have to find sponsor, we have to find the Centre du Cinéma, the Ministère. We are begging money everywhere. My daughter and me, we are tigers. We look for money. But I want this film to be shown. I'm not making film to hide them. I'm delighted that they show Cleo from 5 to 7. Mm-hmm. I'm delighted they show the American film I made in California. They have just been digitized, DCP, and they open small cinema. Very few people come, but it's accessible. It's not forbidden. The thing important is we know we are not blockbuster makers, which I'm not, but I want, if 120 people want to see the film, we want to be able to propose it in the tool of today, which is DCP. So I'm doing a hell of a work. Last week I was restoring the colors of Kung Fu Master. The week before, one thing. I'm just fed up with restoration. But I think it's fair to people who love films to give them the possibility to see our DVD, which is one thing, and DCP, because we love theaters, we love big screen. But it's a terrible subject.
So it means that here in Portugal, all these recent films here, since it's impossible to follow that procedure, most of our films are at risk, and of our recent films, and we should do something about it. The second thing, and I'll say no more. Sorry. The second thing, which I think nobody thinks about when we talk about digital, is that digital projection, like a computer screen, is I don't know how you say it in English. C'est un procédé addictif. You have 3 colors, and when you add the 3 colors, you get this idea of a color film, like a computer screen. In film, actually, what you have is pigments. You have there is matter. The light goes through some matter, and some colors are simply not possible to achieve with an addictive system.
You cannot imagine. They can separate, make this one higher, plus chaud, the other part of the same frame colder. They can make what we call patate, to take the face and give it a little yellow and a little red to make it not dead, and having still a cold. I mean, it's incredibly sophisticated. I'm not defending that, because I love the certified, I love what we did at the time. But this is happening now. You can do whatever you wish.
Okay.
But I think we could have another idea, and the idea is that new techniques bring new style, and we had, for instance, this with Impressionism. Impressionism would be impossible without the colors being made by the industry. So we had Impressionists because certain films can only be made because there is digital. On the other hand, about Renoir and Impressionists, they could only paint because they had these new tubes that the painters needed the assistance to create all the colors. So you can have new styles because you have new techniques, and it's the same with the digital. You can film in a way much more intimate than you can, not only morally, but really to have things more intimate because of digital. But on the other hand, Bonnard, who was a post-impressionist, was very sad. Of course, he had this these tubes all over his studio, and quand il allait dans le motif. But at the end of his life, he said that ce mot, cet art périmé de la peinture, because in fact, painting was disappearing. So I think on one side we have all the possibilities that the new techniques open for new styles. But on the other hand, I love Vermeer. So it's this tension between the possibilities and the things that one loses.
Still shoot in 35 millimeter and even edit
The
in
ones
35.
that are very rich,
in
like
35,
Malik and...
Jacques Rosier, come on. Garel, I think he edits in 35, splicing like before, splicing and displicing.
And
I mean,
in the US, they are creating new kinds of film, for certain films. So,
But what about leaving the technique and speaking about the contenu?
Isn't there a way in which the medium or the format is part of the contents? And here I'm thinking back to some things that you've said in the past about having studied with Gaston Bachelard, who talked about materiality or the importance of materiality for determining even like individual psychology. Like you one time spoke of La Pointe Courte, of the grain of the wood that we see in the very first shot underneath the credits, as introducing the character of Philippe Noiret in a way that his character is related to wood, and the character of the woman is related to iron. So I'm wondering if it doesn't make a difference, shooting digitally or shooting on film. You were also talking about restoring La Pointe Courte, and there's that one scene where there's that flaw, there's that scratch that's in the negative that can't be removed. But you were happy to leave it in because it was sort of a material trace of the original. And also when it comes to music, Joaquim, at least in the US, there's a lot of young people nowadays, and Matt can confirm this for me, who actually have gone back to vinyl. Now it could be that it also could be that film will or that cinema will become like opera, or it's an art périmé, as you say, that it becomes like a domain of the specialists.
I went back to argentic. What you do? Silver. I
right,
went back to
nitrate.
silver negative and silver prints. Why? I do also digital photos. I mean, it's tools they offer us. We can choose.
Yeah. But I wondered if you wanted to say if you felt like different tools gave you different. Led you towards different kinds of content. In other words, does the content come first and then, or do the tools lead you towards certain things?
It goes. It's not established. No, vas-y.
I always just get excited about whatever camera we can find, which is usually predicated on our budget, and then maybe like a grant. For Putty Hill, we got a grant in the form of a camera rental, and that was a Panasonic and a zoom lens, and it had certain limitations. We would have preferred primes, but it allowed us to get to.
Certified.
No, it was a digital, an HD camera.
A good digital.
It was a Panasonic HPX 500, not the best, but okay, yeah. And I think if we had money, we would have maybe chosen a different camera, but it wasn't huge, and it gave us the opportunity with a zoom lens to get to move quickly in these sort of documentary situations, the wake, the skate park, stuff like that. If we were changing lenses, we wouldn't have been able to work that way. This summer I shot on the Red camera, but the first generation Red, because we got the camera from DFFB film school in Germany, and it was what we had. And I really liked it because it has a sort of nostalgic HD look right now. Everybody's shooting on the Alexa or the Area Mira, which is a beautiful camera. But the first generation Red, it looks like, like out of the camera, it looks like Zodiac or something. It's really cool. And it has it's very sharp. It's not low contrast. It has actually like kind of nice, almost grain. It's like a little buzz. So I don't know. It's all like, you try to pick a camera for a particular subject, but if you're given a camera and forced to work with it, then I do think it influences the approach you take to the story.
Well, Matthew, since you mentioned that you worked on the screenplay for your most recent film with somebody who was your partner at the time, that raises another kind of question, because all three of you then have done creative work as part of a couple. Joaquim, you with Nuno, and then of course with Jacques Demy. And I'm wondering if you have any reflections on that. We're so used to thinking about the author as sort of independent. And I guess in your case, it seems like you and Jacques kept your work fairly separate from each other. But I don't know if you want to say anything, Joaquim, about working as a couple, or you met, or if you want to say anything about not working as a couple, working as an individual.
Not together.
Sorry? Nowadays, yes.
I think the creative thing is very personal. It's intimate. It's even, for me, very important to be lonely when you create. So I never worked with somebody, I never wrote with somebody else. And even more, I never worked with Jacques, because he never worked with me on his own films. We would discuss cinema always, see movies, discuss, I mean, sometimes attack each other, because I remember he loved so much Sound of Music that I hate. I found the film so stupid. That woman who cares about 14 kids, she's paid, and then she married a man and she does the same job without being paid. Ooh. I hate it. And so Jacques loved it. So, we argued sometimes. One day I remember we thought we should divorce. If we decide to be so different, and then we loved Bresson together, we loved a lot of films together. So, but this is speaking about film. But at home we had, you saw the film, a little patio. It was one side, when I was the other side. 5 steps, but we never mixed the work. Mm-hmm. And we will speak while eating or evening at night. We will say, "Oh, I'm happy we found something." Not that we hide, but like saying, "Oh, I decided to cast this one or this one," and say, "Good idea." Oh, maybe, etc. But I believe that, and I even need to. I'm very extroverted. I speak easily. I like to see people, but I know at some point you have to, go into yourself and just be alone, and maybe nothing comes out of it. Fine, but so I would not like to share the writing or the ideas. But some people were very well together, like the Dardenne, or other people worked, as a team. Les Taviani, fine, perfect. I mean, it's... Hein? Oui, Strabouillet. So I admire that if they like it, just for my own character. And Jacques was so a lonely person in a way, even though charming and very open to people. So, and his film was very extroverted with a very deep nod, comment dire, nœud.
A knot, or a sort of a center,
of
a kernel.
Neurasthenie and pessimism. So, voilà. So, voilà. I'm saying that cannot be shared for me. But then we come to the shooting. It's wonderful to have people understanding. I always had beautiful assistants and the crew, and I love the work with the DP and propose and the propose. I mean, the job itself, when you do the film, is wonderful. But you have to be, I would say, the only one who has a film written somewhere. With, as I said the other day, with 1 or 2 keys, images, or key feeling, like a sentence that this is what you have to remember. Like, c'est pas la poste, mais c'est écrit là.
I get the same thrill from collaboration as you. It sounds like I wanted to extend it to everyone around me and to the person I was with. But I think ultimately it is private, and I think she's a fiction writer. I write for film. I think together we experienced a certain kind of overexposure by sharing what heretofore had been solitary.
But when you did Hamilton, and it's in your house, friends, and at some point there is a part of documentary in it, because you were doing the party, and then the party goes in a way. And you suggested some sentences, and then they made up others, right?
In Putty Hill? Yeah.
Yeah. At Putty Hill, yes, I'm sorry. And the situation was there, but then it builds itself in a way. what happened, and you let it go. Then you restructure it in the editing, or you took advantage of what had happened as people.
Yeah, I mean, a combination. I worked with Hamilton I edited myself, and it took me 5 years. Putty Hill I worked with an editor, and he had a documentary experience but never worked in fiction, and I think he was able to see things in the footage would have taken me probably a long time to see. We worked together, but he quickly drew connections. So, I mean, I think that scene, the karaoke scene, is really a true collaboration between me, the DP, the actors present, and the editor, each of us sort of writing it. I had a scenario that I shared with the actors. Jeremy, my DP, wrote it in the scene with the actors, and then Mark wrote it again. As an editor, I think he's writing the scene. Because it wasn't...
Writing with a pencil,
yeah.
no.
No, but building, yes.
But the symmetry includes everything. The decision, the format, color, actors, music, mixing. I mean, from the cinema, the whole thing is not just not the screenplay. But you kept the idea that you had to remain cool about the whole thing.
Yes, on the inside.
You are very cool.
Thanks,
But
so are
it's
you.
interesting because it's like seeing your life as if it were somebody else. I felt that. Sometimes you must turn and say, is it here? Is he here? I mean, like, sometimes when they speak about me, you know, I feel they speak about somebody is in my back. But I had the feeling that on the editing and the finishing of you, Hamilton, of both, especially Hamilton, you were like yourself inside, but outside, and just watching the thing, observing, watching, and not being so much involved. Is that possible?
Yes.
Good.
I like to release control.
Well, that brings back the question of autobiography, because to talk about Hamilton for a moment, I mean, in a way, it's a film that's about, at least the male protagonist. The whole point of the film is that the male protagonist is very internal and, in a way, inarticulate, or at least unable to express. He doesn't express any connection to his daughter or to his partner, etc. I think it's a really nice example, I think, of what cinema can do, which is to try and get us to see if we can go inside somebody who doesn't come out of himself.
And I think that's true. The other, I think, key piece that's psychological, which I wasn't able to realize until later, is that, you know, there are no fathers in Hamilton or Putty Hill. There's this absence, and I really think that has to do with my relationship. I'm very close with my father, but our relationship and my inability to sort of make sense of it, articulate it, a desire to push against it. But there was one other little anecdote that I meant to share as part of the introduction to Hamilton, but it was inspired by another Faulkner novel by Light and August. I borrowed the characters' names, Lena and Joe, and the search narrative. She's pregnant. She hasn't had a child in the novel, but she's looking for the father of her child, and he's not introduced until, you know, a quarter of the way into the narrative. I like that. Faulkner's the best.
Maybe you should have a point of view of looking on the question of collaboration. Absolutely.
I think, once again, it's like when we're talking about analog and digital, there are no rules. And in our case, both have done things separately. And when we work together, what we understood is that we shouldn't try to find a sort of compromise of ideas. When we're doing something together, it works more like each one pushes the other to go further in his direction. Then you never know what's going to happen, because finally you have to agree upon what's happening, but it's very it can be very exciting, but I can't have the film in my head because it's born from the wishes of two people. But I've seen very few cases, very few cases when such a working relationship really works. in my life. In Portugal, I just knew one, which was António Reis and Margarida Cordeiro, with whom I had the opportunity to work on sound, and you could feel what came out of those two, and I couldn't really say it ends here, this ends here, and this starts there, but it's very, very rare. What I see quite often, it's a bit sad because you never worked as a technician in other people's films. I don't know.
I work as technician.
Yes.
What would I do?
I don't know, but I
You
had
probably never did.
But it happened to me to work like a sound people. You work with a lot of people, and I worked with a lot of people, and sometimes you had this impression that you have a director who gets something who is written by another person, and then in the end it's very loose because something is happening, but you don't know, you don't have this feeling of a mark of some strong urge to do something personal. And this is very depressing when you're working in such an environment. For instance, as a technician. It happened to me sometimes that I felt quite depressed because I felt we were going not nowhere, but something was being done with no reason. And that's, I think, that's quite sad.
That's the bad form of collaboration, as opposed to the good form, which would be you
I
and
think,
Nuno.
David, that we should ask for our audience or ask some questions. If anyone, okay.
Yes. Are you considering yourself as a resistant regarding cinema nowadays and material values aujourd'hui?
Yes. I started resisting because my first film was really against the main style or point of view in cinema. And I tried not to repeat myself, which is already a resistance, because I was offered to do another sick singer. I was offered to do Le Bonheur in the Minnesota. I was offered, they want you to do what you have done in another country. And then I have been resisting to many things. Once I made a very funny little advertising in '63, but because it was a nice subject, but I've been resisting, I know a lot of good directors. They make their living by accepting commercials once a year in which you are paid into 1 week more than half a week film. And I hate all kind of advertising for cosmetic, all of these things. I hate that. And I refuse it, even though I was offered sometimes a good amount of money to do it. So I resist to advertising. I resist to stupidity as much as I can. No, because it's true. We have to fight some stupid questions, some stupid points of view. And I resist first by aging and not being dead. And I resist by having changed my work, not only because I'm too tired to stay standing 8 weeks in a feature, I couldn't no longer do it, but by finding another way of working. It's resisting to doing the same thing, repeating myself. Some filmmakers I love, like Chabrol, I loved him a lot, but he's doing the same film. He did 30 times more or less the same film. It's fine because we loved what he was doing. He was making money also. Who will complain? But I really like the idea that aging, or just not being dead, obliges us to, I think it's a respect for people who love what we do. What myself is to try to find something different. So in a way, this is resisting. And I try to resist also to the pressure of what supposedly distributor ask, because what supposedly the audience likes. And they know better than we do that what the TV audience likes, and they put always the thing lower and lower. And I try to say that we should, because I've been raised with the Théâtre National Populaire, and that guy was proposing to big audiences, very difficult theater, very high-level theater. But they were going to the factories and speaking at the time of the canteen. What is the canteen? The pause. They were reading pieces of Corneille, sitting, you can understand that. It's very like families who argue and the poor kids have to pay. And they were fighting to bring. And they succeeded to bring 2,200 people, full theater, to play Racine, Brecht, all these things. So, but it's a fight, it's a fight because I cannot do it, because I cannot bring audiences to come if they don't want to come. But it's always proposing, including when I go to a very little cine club in the country and the villages I've been, proposing high-level conversation about what they need, what is the need, why do we have not to accept that TV proposes stupid talk show all the time, and then the film are shown. The Cine Club now in France, Chaîne 2, starts at minuit et demi. This is the Cine Club time. Who can watch films, or not the workers for sure. So it's always a problem. It's very difficult to think that we have to fight that and we have not the tools to fight that. But at least in my mind, I resist.
I want to ask maybe both of you about resistance, but are there other questions from the audience first? Or no, then we'll start to wrap things up. Did you want to say something?
Just one thing. Well, two. It's curious that let's say in the old age, some directors used to write the memories, written in books. We have several examples, memorable books by Elia Kazan, some Fuller, all. But do you think that cinema is a good art because you did, especially you both, essays in the form of memoir or autobiography? Do you think it's a good art as opposed to literature? And the second question is, did you use the camera as a pen, as in the old Dream of Struck, the camera stilo? Did you, or did you write before something and just a treatment, and then you shot what you had written?
Documentary, I never write, or I make a project. It's clear. When I did the Gleaner, what can you glean? So it was too late for melon, it was too late for peach, so they could glean potatoes. I make a list, and then I try to find where I can do gleaning of this. And I wanted to go in different part of France to have different accents. So I have a project, but you don't write a documentary. Yeah. This film is written by sequences like, Belgium beach, but sometimes it's not written. I take an example because I love it. I wanted to go to the house I've been raised. Like, I thought the house in a little street in Belgium where I spent my youth until the war, like 10 years. I go there, I call, and the doctor said, oh yes, come, because now we will soon maybe sell the house, come, you'll be my guest. So I come, I ring, let me enter. I go to the garden, I have memories of the garden, I remember my mother. Then I go to the room where I was raised, we were 5 kids with my 2 other sisters. And I thought I would maybe find some memories. And I bump into these crazy addicts to les trains, des petits trains en fer, comment on dit ça? Model train. And this man is so upset. And then I become documentarist again, because I love the fact that he's crazy. He loves train made in Switzerland, or the one who crossed Switzerland, and he explained the price. And I said you should maybe offer a diamond to your wife. He said, no, but I have to buy this and this. So I became myself excited about that. And I did a little piece of these people, because addict people are always funny to meet, because they're totally crazy, but enjoying it. Then I go out of the house and say, well, okay, I met these people, nothing happened with my own youth. So it's what I'm saying. I couldn't write that because I couldn't know that it would happen. But I had written, let's go to Brussels, let's find the house. It turned something else. So I had written what I wanted to show, including the memory. So that's why we built something. But it's written vaguely, like 1 page by beach. But then I improvise a lot, because then I went to the beach, I wrote my name, I thought it was nice to write it. A lot of things happen when I do it, but I need the people to be with me, I need the crew to be with me. let's do that. Oh, people have to be very, comment je dirais, adaptable, because it's fun to have a project, but to be able to invent it while shooting. So it was, I knew I would do a beach on my street. I knew what I wanted to do, but a lot of things happened on the way, And I wanted to speak about Jacques. I wanted to ask some people of my crew to come and help me on that because it was difficult. And it's organized, but not totally. That I think we all do in documentaries, because there is a project. Even the Gleaners, I knew where I wanted to go, but so many things happen. Then you have, I say that le hasard, I say chance is my first assistant, So things happen. We say, okay, I make a film, come. And they come. Things, moments.
In our case, we didn't write a script or anything for our last film. We had, I had a few themes or ideas that I wanted to touch in the film, and 2 or 3 things I knew we were going to shoot there, and we had to organize it, and the rest was quite open. And in the end, many of the ideas I wanted to speak about are not in the film, and many things that were not at all just came in. So, and the other question, if we think that film can be a way of doing biographies or
you said before, this film of Manuel Oliveira's was criticism of his own.
Yes.
This is again, it chose not to write, but to shoot.
I think it's a perfectly good way if you feel like doing. I think this confessional style, or whatever, confessional style, autobiographical style. If we go back, maybe we could trace it to Saint Augustine. I mean, he's the first. Maybe, who knows? I don't know. But
Rousseau, if you don't like.
no, but no. I Proust, of course, but I'm going back in time, going back, and it's year 300 or something. So it has been done over and over again, and I think film is as good as any. Even in painting, you have it, like Velasquez or whatever. This sort of reflection in the end. I don't know.
So I think we can close this session. Don't you think, David?
Okay.
No, you had something to ask.
No, I didn't. I just didn't know
That is the moment we are alive.
If there are any last words about resistance or filmmaking as resisting. If I didn't know if Jacques. The question was for Agnès, but I wanted to give a. I don't know if Matthew or Joaquim have something that they want to say about filmmaking against conventions or against the marketplace or.
I think Agnès said it very, very well, and I think it's essential. For me, it's pushing against central conflict theory, this idea of the human will is driving the narrative, pushing against capitalism, against in the modes of production as well as the content, and also I think. Pushing against resisting sort of dominant ways of representing America, for me, as an American filmmaker.
On the way, I'm also, as a feminist, resisting we know what is the situation of men in the world and how it changes lately, little, but sometimes goes back. It's such a very slow fight made by many women, courageous women. And this is part of resisting for me, not to quit. Some people say to me, now that you get older, are you still a feminist? More than ever.
I don't have a clear answer, but I could ask you, and I think that being a man, you can also be a feminist. I don't know if you agree with me. So But what I feel is that in Europe, it was maybe still possible until, for instance, some of the films you've done had a crew, were done a bit at the margin of the system, but were still found. In the States, there was a clear distinction between what was the mainstream and the underground cinema. What I feel is that even in Europe, we're losing whatever gets out of the main, of what they think the audiences will accept is becoming more and more difficult. Films are that don't comply to these rules, they don't get distributed, they don't get seen, and sometimes quite important things go completely unnoticed. And it's a question of chance. I don't know.
But also, I'm fighting, but I'm fighting in the march, as you said. I'm in a way known, but in the march.
Yes.
I have nothing to do with the mainstream making money. I had one film that made money, Saint-Ouen, Vagabond. It's the only one who made incredibly success, which means, in a way, it's a mistake in my career.
Do you know that I had forgotten that Saint-Ouen was a film made by you? I saw it a long time ago, and in my head, I had forgotten who directed it. It's really incredible, but it's so.
So what you say, it's more and more difficult, but there is a margin that becomes very narrow, but that's where we can fight because you find some distributors, you find a way of opening the films, but it's more and more difficult because, we have filmed in France, not bad, but sort of half bad, and they do 12 million, people, and 10 million, 9 million, and we are doing, when I'm so proud, for Beaches of Agnès, made 250,000. I found it was wonderful. But you see, this is so ridiculous facing the real success that I feel we have to fight to be successful in the march. Mm-hmm. Not bad.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Foundation and the Programa para a Língua e Cultura Portuguesa e o Centro de Arte Moderna, na presença dos seus diretores, Rui Vieira Neri e Isabel Carlos, que está ali. Queria agradecer. I would like to thank the presence of Agnès Varda and Joaquim Pinto and Matthew Porterfield and Carlos Arroba, of course, Álvaro Arroba, and to thank David Pendleton to curate this program so elegantly. Thank you very much.